it's clearly going to be a wave here because we know live streaming is popular, particularly in gaming, but coupled with that automatic nature of being able to buy instantly within live streaming, that's been kind of the key in China, and I think that's coming here.
This is Creative Disruption, the intersection where entertainment, data, and creativity meet. Here's your hosts, Ricky Ray Butler and Derral.
Welcome back to the Creative Disruption Podcast, where we've been on hiatus for a little bit, but we are back in fold, and I'm joined by my friend, my cohort, Ricky Ray Butler. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm glad to finally be here. It's great that we finally, got to teach you how to use Zoom.
I won't say how many times it took you to get on the Zoom call, but it's okay, my brother. I'm actually glad to be back because, I know you and we talk a lot about industry stuff, and it's been great. And there's been a lot of things happening in the news. And I just want to let everyone out there listening or watching to know, we're going to be a lot more active, and we're going to be not necessarily recording them in batches. We're going to actually do it very consistently, so we'll be more relevant. Don't you want to be more relevant, Ricky?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there were times where we would literally record 6 different episodes in one day.
It's and then
3 months later, we're still talking about stuff that were really relevant.
Yeah.
So us going to the live format, I think is going to be great, which I think we'll be starting the next 2 weeks, right?
Yeah, no, really excited about that. But, we have to talk about some of the stuff that's in the news. And I'm telling you, there's an app that I've been predicting for the last 2 years. And we can go back on this podcast and you can see in different articles that I would say it'd be the #1 app. And I think it's going to just really absorb Generation Z and even millennials, and it's that TikTok thing, and I don't know. Have you been on it as of late? Are you?
Of course.
I'm getting sucked into this micro content, man. It is so bad. I find myself just swiping up and swiping to the left and tapping. And
for sure. But also when it comes to discovery, I think, they have a very sophisticated algorithm or algorithms when it comes to discovery. And I actually think when it comes to discovery, they're the biggest competitor to YouTube. I can literally spend hours watching puppy videos on TikTok. I never imagined that happening.
Wait. Are you seriously? You watch the puppy video?
Oh, of course. I mean, we're right now getting ready to get a puppy, for the family, and we're gonna get a mini golden doodle.
Okay, so it's anticipating your puppy purchase.
Absolutely. Oh yeah,
I'll tell you what. I just love to deep dive into algorithms and try to figure out. And I've never seen a predictive engine as accurate as the TikTok engine. And the engagement and all the stuff that it does, it's almost kind of scary that it's anticipating exactly what you want. Where algorithms like YouTube, you have to kind of put enough in your watch history to know exactly what you're doing. I think we should definitely have someone on, in the future to talk about that, because I'm super interested in it. And I know, to me, it's my kids are spending a lot less time, on YouTube and more time on TikTok, and the shareability factor is just impactful. It's quickly share whatever social platform or on text, and it really pulls them back into something. It's almost it's that micro content's more meant for the meme generation. And it's just really quick memes, really quick stories that are there, and too much dancing from my point of view.
Yeah. But it's diversifying, big time. But, I find myself, using YouTube more, but still using a lot of TikTok. I mean, I kind of use both platforms for different purposes. But, what it comes down to is it's in a way decentralized, how to create a movement. So beginning stages of YouTube, you could get a viral video. Very easy to get a viral video trending and going everywhere. Same thing happened with Facebook. Now with TikTok, it's different because it's not just creating a viral video, but it's more of creating a movement. Across a variety of people, across a variety of influencers, as well as people that aren't influencers that don't have huge followings. And, we worked on a campaign where, one of these movements, ended up, getting 20 billion views. and it's still going today, and it's still kicking, it's still gaining momentum. And so it's really one of those times where it kind of levels the playing field, and it makes it so brands or creators or anyone that wants to accomplish something exciting or with a positive message or do something that's really fun, they can really get something going and make it so it explodes.
Yeah, I think it's really fascinating, and I think that when these other people like Instagram and YouTube are looking at the platform, they don't see what the magic really is. And I think that, with the introduction of Reels and YouTube Shorts, the component that they're really missing is you're taking the music or the sound, and that's what usually makes things trend, is the sound and the engagement and the hashtags and getting on the For You page. And like that little component of the creation, I feel like makes TikTok its own thing, that it's going to be hard to create unless you have those, deals with the music publishers and stuff like that. But it's like, at the end of the day, that's where the magic really is.
Well, show me one music artist today that isn't leveraging TikTok to gain momentum with their new song launch.
Yeah, no, for sure.
I mean, Justin Bieber is on there. I mean, all the hip hop artists are on there. I mean, everyone is leveraging this platform because, there really is a correlation between TikTok and getting people excited about music, as well as, pushing, a music video that's on YouTube. Yeah. And it's also interesting to see, a lot of the nostalgia, come up. I believe you have, Beetlejuice, the Broadway show, resurged as a result of TikTok. And
it's just amazing. It's so amazing. I gotta say a little story here, because it's something that, that you don't know the power of it, but I think a lot of new artists are going to be coming up, getting their sound, their creation out there, because when people use it, it's literally persuading them to buy and I really love this, or I'm really engaging with this, whatever. But Mr. Beast, I'm actually in his office right now, but it's when he decided to go on TikTok, he's like, oh, this is cool. Let's just go and do a sound. We'll do a giveaway. And it was literally breaking TikTok because everybody was doing it because of other motives. And TikTok says, please take that down. Please delete it out. So he did. But and they fixed algorithms to anticipate stuff like that. But I think it's a new frontier, and what I love about it, it has the feel where the average person can create content and bring out their creativity in a way that we haven't seen yet. And I think the short form content, I think the meme generation of short form content is where the industry's shifting. Yeah. And longer form content, unfortunately, I think is going to be dying off in, every year. It's just going to get less and less because people don't want to sit through a 3-hour video or a 3-hour movie. I mean, they will for certain things. Don't get me wrong. They'll binge watch Stranger Things.
There's going to be different content for different purposes, but we do know that the trend for the last 10 years or 10 plus years is to consume as much good content as quickly as possible. And especially with Gen Z, that is what's happening. But one thing I think that's worth talking about is the impact that can be a result of TikTok. Early on, people sometimes question, algorithms on new platforms where there's, a lot more virality that's happening. But with TikTok, there's a lot of people on there, and it's all very organic and it's very strong. We've worked with clients, in the oral care business to other types of brands where we've seen a huge lift in retail sales as a result of launching a TikTok campaign. And so it's one of the platforms where we are really putting a lot of resources and investment in, especially around AI, because there's so much going on. It's breaking all the records in growth compared to all the.
I've never seen it.
But it's also a place where you can drive sales. And so with that, we should probably talk about Teespring and the partnership with Teespring. I don't know if you're familiar with TikTok's sister company or platform that's also owned by ByteDance, Douyin.
Yep. Yeah.
Douyin, very similar, platform where you can create, similar content, but it's also a hub for e-commerce. And there's thousands of influencers and people that are making a lot of money with driving sales on that platform. And so when I saw that announcement with Teespring, I got really excited because there could be a time where we can start modeling ways of driving conversions when through the platform, when working with creators on TikTok.
It'd be like the micro QVC, right? It's like you can jump on, and the cool thing about it too is their live functionality.
YouTube already, but it's going to be very interesting to see how it works on TikTok.
Well, no, but the difference on YouTube, it's awkward. Like literally, it's awkward. It's not integrated right because it's like, don't get me wrong. I love the engineers at YouTube and they're doing the best that they possibly can, but it's beneath the video. It's on a shelf, right? In TikTok, in the way that they're going to get engaged, it's going to be more like QVC. Click this button and buy. I mean, that's the whole thing right there. Yeah. And whether you can go on live or the micro video content, I think it's going to be really super powerful. Just because that will bring a level of intimacy, and I do mean that with your audience, that they will want to buy instead of doing a call out. And it's just kind of just down below. Oh yeah, there's the shirt, but it's more they're creating content around how can we get people to actually purchase our merch. So super interesting. So I think we need to get to
what happened. Derral, did you see what happened with like Travis Scott and McDonald's this last week?
Yeah, insane.
Where they came out with unique merch. I mean, we've pitched that a lot to our clients, and we haven't had a lot of that stick. But with this new, opportunity on TikTok, I think we're going to be seeing this sort of thing happen a lot more. There's going to be new merch lines that are going to sell out quickly, and people are going to be watching as much content as possible. And it's also going to be, hopefully, create a pattern where people are watching that content to also shop and purchase.
Well, I think the issue that I've always had with TikTok, and we've addressed this, in past podcasts and even with VPs that work with TikTok. I had one really in-depth conversation about a year and a half ago in Singapore. But when we were actually discussing, it's like, okay, monetization, because at the end of the day, to level up your content creator, they need to make money. They need to be able to do this full time. And they're like, hey, well, the way that we do it is different. We'll actually create a fund, which they have. And start, giving money back to the creators that are helping them. But I think this play right here, this play is going to be bananas. It's going to literally make
the best for the platform and the creator.
Exactly. It's going to just make it go bananas. And I think it's going to make it more appealing that I believe that IGTV and Instagram's need to pay really close attention. I think Facebook's needed it close, really attention. But more importantly, YouTube. Because that's where the young eyeballs are going. The young eyeballs would rather spend time right now on a Mr. Beast video or anything on TikTok. And so it's just like that's kind of their place. I got 4 boys and a girl, and all of them they'd rather spend their time on TikTok now instead of where their favorite creator was on YouTube.
No, that's amazing. I mean, it's really interesting to see that pattern change, because I don't think that has happened as much with the other platforms.
Yeah,
Line, Snapchat, or Instagram. No one replaced YouTube, but right now it seems like there is a bigger trend of different. The Gen Z of wanting to go and spend more time on another platform. It's got to be something that is scary to Google, but I also think it's in a way TikTok is going to become a threat to Amazon. I mean, the future is. But I think there's a good chance.
It depends on who's going to acquire it. I just think, is it Microsoft or whoever, it doesn't matter. I mean, we can go into that in another time. But I think it all depends in the next coming months of the direction it's going to go. But from a content creator standpoint, it is one of the most disruptive, new platforms I've seen ever. It just is super engaging, super addictive. It's super fun to really bring your creativity. I think the editing suite that they actually have in the platform is amazing. Ricky, let's switch gears here because you and I, we love to travel. And you always, when I go out in a different country, I'm like, hey, Ricky, I literally will pick up my phone and I'll text you. I'm like, hey, Ricky, where's the best place to go eat in Prague? And you always give me the best things. And you always take pictures with your food. You always record food. And I think if we go back to our text chains, there's more pictures of food that we're sharing than even pictures of our family. I don't know why that is. But do you want to do a little intro for our guest today?
Well, no, I remember a while back that there was a new MCN that was launched. And I remember just thinking, wow, well, there's definitely an MCN bubble. I don't know how well this is going to do, but it was an MCN that was focused around food. And I just assumed that this company was just going to represent influencers and creators that, had food channels or did DIY around food, etc. And I was completely wrong. They ended up being a major empire of content, Tastemade, where they, started out, I think, representing some channels, but then they ended up just creating their own content and just doing it amazingly well. Where I think today they have 2.5 billion viewers a month and over 300 million active users. And so I'm really excited to introduce my friend, who's a pioneer in the space, Larry Fitzgibbon. Larry, thank you for joining us.
Hey guys, thank you. Really glad to be on the podcast.
Yeah, you've accomplished so much, with content and in our community. I would love to hear kind of like your background story of like what inspired you to start Tastemade and what made it so successful.
Yeah, thanks for asking. I started the company with my two co-founders, Joe Perez and Stephen Kidd. The three of us were part of the founding team of another internet media company that started way back in 2006. We were three of six co-founders of a company called Demand Media, which, we grew from 6 people to 600, took it public on the New York Stock Exchange. It was, a really exciting ride. But about a year after that, the three of us left, started to think about, really what we kind of wanted to do with our lives. And we kind of thought about two things. One was, if you're going to do a startup and you're going to go through all the pain and anguish of what that means, pick stuff you love. Sounds like you guys love what we love. The notion of coming to work every day, thinking about food or talking to your friend or a creator about the next travel space they want to go to, or, just kind of our love for, home and design. Those were all passion categories for us. So, those are easy things to get up in the morning to go, think about because, startups really do start to take up most of your headspace. And then the second was some of the things that you were talking about. But again, if you go back to 2012, things that were really of the moment, which were these big trends that were about to happen in media, things like social and mobile and video, and now kind of the instantly global world that we live in. And we thought if we could put those two kind of interests or passions together, that it would be a big idea. And, as Ricky kind of talked about, it has turned into that, right? We've done a really good job over the years of really defining this brand and really building a big audience globally. And it's been, a really fun ride for us all.
I've been a super fan of content. Like I like see certain content. I'm like, oh, who made this or who's doing this? And I like to dig deep and I go down these little rabbit holes all the time, Larry. And when I found your stuff, I'm like, there's like a pattern. Like you got the pattern of feed driven content. I'm like, there's a lot of people that don't get that. And I'm like, man, this is good. It's engaging. I mean, I can sit and watch it. I don't even need to turn on sound. I mean, it's like one of these great things. And I started to realize that you actually had a pattern of release and you're like leveraging the algorithm in a certain way and you're like building an audience and you're cross promoting. I mean, I'm seeing all these details. Most people are just watching the video. But what I was the most impressed with is your anticipation of what the viewer wanted to watch. And could you just take a minute, like when you're going into it, you started out, and I know things modify as you're getting more data and as you're bringing new brands on and you're featuring new different products and so on. But like, talk to us about the process of where you went from curating content or being an MCN to creating your own content. I'm really fascinated on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I listened to the podcast, so I know a little bit of kind of what you guys cover over time, and I like to talk a little bit of some YouTube lore. So I'll give some now. You probably remember, kind of back in the 2010, 2011 era, YouTube was, they came out with that big creator fund. You were just talking about it a second ago, how TikTok is now attempting to do that, but YouTube came out and said, hey, we're going to put $200 million into the ecosystem. And at our last company, we were successful in securing some of that. And then when we were starting Tastemade, we went back to our friends at YouTube, Alex and Robert, and said, hey, we're about to start this new thing. Do you have any money, any more of that money left? And we were very fortunate that they did. They saved a little bit for us. So when we started the company, we actually started it with both things in mind. You mentioned the curation and the MCN. That was certainly part of it because at the time, that was the only way you could really scale audience, right? And so that's why we were thinking in those terms. But the other was we really did want to be a creator of content from the beginning and really build our own brand. And I think, as Ricky, as you were talking a second ago, I think that's why we are here and maybe some of those others aren't here, is because they just had a different mindset. They weren't really trying to build a consumer brand. They really were, trying to be an aggregator. And from day one, we wanted to do both. And so I think, it's funny when you make choices like that, or, when you decide why you're going to start something, when you look back, you end up kind of doing what you thought you were going to do, and if you pick a good thing, it's good. If you pick a bad thing, it can be bad too. But I think that part was important for us. And so as we thought about,
I think that, I'm sorry, Larry, like that right there is the reason exactly why you're still in business and why everybody went away. Because they went for the greed. It's more about, we need to acquire more and more and more people. And you're thinking, no. The longer play is, yes, we have our own vertical and we're creating content in a very engaging way. And if we amplify it with the content that we know is going to work, that we don't need to talk to a creator, we can actually create it based off the data. Boom. I mean, that's a sustainable model that will actually be perpetual, where this one, they have to encourage the creators to create content, and you're actually creating better content than most creators.
No one's going to be happy if you're representing that many, content creators. There's a good chance that it's going to be hard to retain them. And it's also going to be a good chance that it's going to be hard to figure out who do you represent, the content creator or the brand. But with Tastemade, I mean, you obviously saw that creating content was the future. You optimized that and you scaled it. And I mentioned earlier that you guys became like this empire of content. And when I say that, I mean that literally. I mean, you've been done really well on YouTube. You've done really well on Facebook and across all of the different social platforms. But you've become very cross-platform outside of social, where you have a very strong presence when it comes to SVOD and all those different platforms, as well as when it comes to television. I mean, you are across almost every platform out there. And so with that said, we were talking about TikTok early on. Have you guys started to start creating content on TikTok? And can you explain to us maybe some of your, goals with some of these new up and coming platforms?
Yeah. Thank you. We are on TikTok very successfully. Actually, we've been and around the world, as you would imagine. As you mentioned, one aspect of being an empire is that you're global, I think. And Tastemade's creating content in about 7 different languages. We have physical studios around the world where we're creating original programming in native language for each of these markets. And so, yes, we embraced TikTok pretty early on. And we've seen some great success there. So, if you go follow the Tastemade channel, I think it has over 1 million followers. We also have a channel called, and I think this one will be fun to talk about. We have a channel called Tiny Kitchen. And this is where it kind of gets to the data. And actually its origins come from what was happening on YouTube. One of the insights that we found on YouTube pretty early on was, and this was because we were kind of curating people from around the world, was this phenomenon in Japan where people were making all these videos with tiny things in them, right? They might do tiny food. They weren't really doing tiny food, but you would see them doing, these miniature things. And it was really fascinating, and it had sort of like, they would, oftentimes there were no people. You would just hear this sort of sing-songy music. And it was just an amazing format, right? And an amazing format that was native to YouTube, native to the internet. And so we kind of saw what some of those people were doing and said, wow, that would be really interesting. What if we applied that to our category, which was food? And so we created Tiny Kitchen. And for that, what we did was we actually made a physical Tiny Kitchen. And then we make miniature food to scale. So we might do a mushroom risotto recipe, But when we do it in tiny form, we present the recipe in, tiny mushroom risotto scale. So it's really fascinating. It's really fun to watch.
It was you, Larry. It was you. You actually, I went down a rabbit hole for like 3 weeks thanks to that. So much watch time.
I went to Larry's studio, and he gave me a tour around everything, and to see what they do from a production standpoint when it comes to Tiny Kitchen is just fascinating. Like it's all just very real. Everything's like miniature, and there's like you see like 8 people all around this little set trying to
just trying to get
happen. It's
do the cooking. No, I literally went down a rabbit hole for 2 weeks. It's no exaggeration. I'm like, this is just like fascinating, and I was like really looking at like the cinematography of that micro level of recording, and I thought it was like super interesting, especially when you'd actually do the cooking, and like everything was like super small, and I don't know, I pretty much lost 2 weeks of my life.
Well, we're sorry for that. You and I think that content's been viewed over 1 billion times. Just Tiny Kitchen franchise. So you're not the only one.
Okay, good.
And it's on every platform. But back to your question, Derral, it really was data driven, right? That's what led us to that format. Was one, really understanding what was working, where there was really meaningful engagement as we were studying the broader ecosystem, and then also format. As you guys know, formats are so important because people do fall in love, with specific formats, and they want to come back to that thing they like and expect. And if you can deliver consistency on that, that's really, one of the keys to really building audience. And so that's a franchise that we have on all platforms.
Larry, can I just emphasize this just really quick, because I think there's a lot of people that listen to this podcast that they're content creators or they're in charge of their marketing budget. But what you just said is literally the secret to audience development. Like that statement that you just made of really understanding programmable formatting, where people expect a certain thing in a certain way and they want to be unique. They want to push the envelope and they were doing all this other stuff, and it disconnects with what people fell in love with the original content for. And then you wonder why there's so much attrition. People come in, they view, and then there's attrition on the back end. They stop watching the videos is because they're not getting what you promised them of what they subscribed to or engaged with or followed with, which is that programmable content. And I think that right there, I just like, for me, I'm just adamant about it. I when I work with my clients or my students, I'm like, this is the key to that. It's like having a predictable way to present content that will be engaged in that specific way. So
it's important for creating content and to create that programming and that brand. For both, I think, creators and brands, but from a brand perspective as well, when they're wanting to collaborate with content creators like Tastemade or other, content creators out there, it's really important to be data driven and to make sure when you're doing a collaboration that you're being consistent with the programming. That if anything, you're empowering the programming, but you're not distracting from it. And a lot of times, and we talked about this before, where sometimes brands want to come and they want to change things up or mix things up, and that can be detrimental to a campaign when working with creators if you're not, following, what's been making. I mean, if you're not following the data which is what's been making them successful in the first place.
Yeah, that's why sometimes we will take a franchise that and sort of liberate it from our channel. That is one of the challenges. Derral, the challenge you're describing is very real, right? That we've been successful in building audience, but what you're saying applies to us as well, right? In part because we are a brand that has many shows. And as you know, right, particularly, it a little bit depends on the platform. Success really is kind of having one show and then really, again, consistently doing that. And so that's why in some instances we've shaved off some of these shows and kind of liberated them and, gave them their own channels. So that's why on TikTok, the Tiny Kitchen channel has its own channel as opposed to trying to nest that under Tastemade, is because we know that there's an audience that specifically is interested in that show. And not everybody that comes to Tastemade maybe loves that show as much as them. And so that's some of the choices and balances we've had to make as we've developed the Tastemade brand, but then obviously we have show brands beneath it. We have to think about that every time. Is this something that goes with the core, or should we liberate it and give it its own channel, as an example?
Yeah. Well, Larry, you've been able to, obviously do things in a very innovative way, and you guys have led with innovation and have been able to really adapt, to the changing world of the platforms and the content. What do you think is the future of, content creation? From, your perspective at Tastemade, but also just in general. I mean, what are some new patterns and trends that you're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I think the rate of change is pretty incredible, right? And it is hard to keep up, and particularly, it does force people like us or companies like us or even creators, right, who have limited resources to really adapt to this new world, which isn't always easy. The thing that's so stunning to me, right, is we're now seeing like there is no more, put content on Instagram, right? I mean, there's 4 different video formats on Instagram alone, and they're totally different, right? The way that the platform exposes that content, the way consumers are interacting with that content, what they expect from each different format is fundamentally different. And so, there's sort of a game within a game, as I sort of think about it, is you really need to understand the differences of all those different platforms and then really know how to exploit each of them. And for some people or for certain companies, that's maybe just a bridge too far, right? That's just too much complexity to deal with. As you mentioned, we're sort of set up for that, right? That's exactly what we do. Generally, what we do is again, I've heard this, you guys talk about this before, is just get there early, right? That we kind of pride ourselves on being first. That's sort of a part of who we are. And I think the platforms look to us to be first with them. But getting out there early, but smartly, right? You don't want to over do too much. We can get out there with a little bit of content, get some testing going, and really start to understand it before we overinvest, right?
I think that right there is the key, because I think a lot of people are like, I'm not going to spend so much time developing a new strategy for this platform that may or may not take off. And that's a detriment to a lot of people's growth, because when you really at the end of the day look at what's actually happening, that could be the next big thing of where everything shifts. And you said two very interesting points. You're going to do it. You're going to be like one of the first ones there, but you're going to test to see if the content works and actually have a strategy. And that's where most people do. They just literally regurgitate everything that they've ever done, with everything. Oh, we can cross-pollinate it. We can put this content on every little thing. And it just doesn't work that way. It's not meant to be consumed that way. Even like you said on Instagram, there's like 4 to 5 different delivery mechanisms to get to that viewer, right? And at the end of the day, each one of them is a different experience. And if it's disjointed, they're never going to follow. They're never going to subscribe. They're never going to, engage with it the same way if it was meant to live and breathe on that platform. Now, there's certain styles of videos that can be repurposed, but you need to look at the full viewing experience of why people are actually coming on the platform and why they're engaging with it. And so, I mean, I love that. What was some of the early takeaways when you're actually doing this? I don't know if it was Musically when you were coming on at that time, or if it was TikTok, but how did you do your toe in the water campaign to just say, okay, will this actually work on this new platform?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, particularly in the beginning, and I think this has waned a little bit, but the hashtags were kind of a key way to get exposure in the early days, right? Creating content that was sort of on trend or attaching. Again, for us, we have such a large library, and we're in evergreen categories. We can test without necessarily having to go shoot a whole new video necessarily, and so we could kind of see what was happening with kind of communities building up around hashtags and trends around specific hashtags, and we could kind of jump on those. I think there's a little less, I think that's probably a little less effective today than it was before. The other thing is, when you think about the audiences, I think a lot of the audience on TikTok are people that are also on Snapchat, right? They're the younger people on Instagram, and so. Tastemade is huge on both Instagram and on Snapchat. Again, talking about being first, when Snapchat Discover launched, there were 20 partners, and, Tastemade was one of those first partners, right? And so we've been programming natively to Snapchat on Discover since 2015. And so that's enabled us to build just a massive audience there. And so I think there was also just familiarity with our brands, because it was sort of a similar audience. It was younger people. Back to one of the questions that Ricky Ray mentioned a second ago was just, some other trends. Obviously, TikTok's a massive trend, but the other thing you guys were talking about was live streaming commerce. We have some audience in China. We've been testing live stream commerce in China because it really is a massive phenomenon. We've been testing live stream commerce in China because it really is a massive phenomenon there. It's most people here in the United States just simply don't know that much about it or paying much attention. Starting to roll that type of product out. It's clearly going to be a wave here because we know live streaming is popular, particularly in gaming, but coupled with that flexibility or not so much flexibility, but that automatic nature of being able to buy instantly within live streaming, that's been kind of the key in China. And I think that's coming here. So that's a big trend that I think is going to be interesting to watch over the next year or so.
I agree with you 100%. Actually, I mean, before we go into the, I like to call it the live stream war, because we were talking about the streaming wars between Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, and all those platforms. But as a result of quarantine, we've seen so much more engagement when it comes to live streaming on the different social platforms, and it's going to be very interesting to see who wins. And I think whichever platform is the most optimal when it comes to live purchasing is probably going to be the platform that ends up being the most successful and is going to get the most engagement. And
I always thought that was going to be Instagram, to be honest with you, just because it was meant is like, okay, this is going to be QVC, but I think TikTok's it. I really do. It's just like when you get an average person that can actually make money at this, and I think Instagram can have its subset of an audience, but it's a very narrowed audience. Like you're either in fitness or beauty or whatever, that's what it is. But TikTok's everyone. Like literally, you can go down any rabbit hole, whatever. I think that's going to be the true key. If they can figure it out, and I think this Teespring test is the key.
Sure.
But if they can figure it out, and then two, if I was Amazon, I would have like literally offered every dollar that I possibly could to integrate, because that would have been a perfect mix between TikTok and Amazon. But I just don't see that happening.
It's going to be interesting, and it'll be interesting, if the different platforms are different for different industries, or maybe more optimal for specific industries, like what we're seeing right now when it comes to charities and getting donations and increasing donations through influencer communities. We're noticing that it's Twitch and Google Live. YouTube Live, not Google Live, but Twitch and YouTube Live are the two that are doing the best when it comes to conversions. So, but it is going to be very interesting to see which one is the first one to go mainstream, or if that ever even happens.
Yeah, but the difference is, Ricky, and this is the truth. It's like that's what they've been doing. They've been donating on Twitch since day one. Like that was their monetization model, right? It's like you're donating to your favorite
Not
creator.
Necessarily. There's other platforms that you can leverage. And
I see. I know what you're saying, but I'm just saying that when the audience they're already used to it, it's easier to have them purchase, right? But there hasn't been one that it's like here's a shopping system. And we probably should have Dave Lazar on, because he has some of the most amazing tech I've ever seen with this. Which is blending Shopify. I want Shopify to win the Amazon war. I would rather have a Shopify because that's like third party. You can either self-fulfill or whatever. You can own the data, but it's like taking that live experience and blending it in. And, it is working right now on Instagram and some other stuff. If I owned the company, I would just buy his company and just integrate it in, and then just give the power to the creator where here you do your own fulfillment, instead of saying, okay, you have to use a Teespring because they're a certified, third party, whatever. And I think that's where it is, because your biggest YouTube channels right now that are on the platform that sell the most, they're not using Teespring to fulfill. And there's only a handful of providers that they'll allow to do it, but they still, like the one that we're using for Mr. Beast is Shopify. Like that,
Sure.
100%.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. It's to me, it's very exciting that live streaming is finally in the West becoming more and more mainstream, and I think has a long ways to go. But it's gonna be exciting to see what happens. Larry, you mentioned China before, and how this is something that is mainstream that everyone's doing. China is so far ahead in so many different ways. When it comes to delivery services, or when it comes to the adoption of new content. But what's interesting is, one thing that, I learned when I was in China last year was that supposedly, and again, I can't validate these numbers and I haven't looked at the spreadsheets, but, there's articles that reference this, I believe, in China. But supposedly, Alibaba, spent over $1 billion on just content creators and influencers to drive sales. And we don't see brands spending that level of money right now in this community, but we all know that there's going to be a shift. The media world right now, when it comes to the media industry, it's over 100 and I believe like $90 billion, or it was in 2019. And influencer was like around like 10 billion. We're going to be seeing all those dollars shift over, and I think live streaming could be a big reason why, because it's going to force all brands, both that are startups, that are fast growing, but also Fortune 50 companies, they're all going to have to learn how to attribute sales.
Yeah,
and
I think that's
live stream might be that channel to do that.
Yeah, that's the key. I think it's the two things. One, Derral, what you were mentioning.
Hi, Jimmy. Come say hi.
Yeah, it's been a while.
I can't see your face.
Yeah, here.
Sorry, I literally invaded his office.
Yeah,
how you doing, brother?
What important stuff are we talking about?
Hey, we need to have you back on, but Derral doesn't want to invite you again.
Are you doing the podcast right
now? Give us some words of wisdom.
Make good videos. There you go.
There you go.
All right, well, I'll let you guys do your thing.
All right, bro.
Right. Hey, Larry, sorry, finish what you were saying.
I love it. A little impromptu sesh there. I think it's the kind of a little bit of combination of what both you guys are saying. One is that UI is just so critical, and that is what you see. If you watch, if you download one of the big Chinese shopping apps, and you watch just what the user experience is, you'll notice that it's just so seamless. It's so easy just to click one button and then the thing's coming to your house, right? It really is that easy. And I think, you were talking about, the YouTube and, they're doing it, and that's what's got to change, right? Is these platforms were native mobile from the day one. They were native shopping from day one. And so all those like little friction points, they just don't exist, right? It's very easy to do. And then on the other side, it's just a massive trend there. And it will be interesting to see how it translates. It makes sense that it will, because again, there's real reasons for brands to get behind this. And by the way, like brands that all of, our companies work with every day, they're actively doing this stuff, right? I mean, this is not going to be new to them, because China is such a big shopping market, right? And so all of the big brands have been figuring this out in China, the big global brands. And so I don't think it'll be that much of a stretch. And again, the power will be, it really solves one kind of fundamental question, which is the content I'm doing with this creator or this brand or this company translating to sales? And the answer will be either yes or no, right? Because the data will be there. And so I think for that reason, it has a really good opportunity.
Well, and I think too, you hit a really good point, Larry, in the sense that they try to retrofit a feature that it wasn't intended for that. And so I look at like the simplicity of UI design and knowing the viewing experience. That's why I literally will hedge my bets on TikTok, because it's not that disruptive. It's not anything different than what they're currently doing. The only aspect is they're gonna have a button pop up when they want to sell something, and you're giving that content creator that opportunity to push something. And so it is more integrated than, oh, you got to download this app, or you have to click on this button to get to this place to do this. Like, it's very awkward. Facebook literally has a new feature every single day that no one ever uses because it's like, feature overload. And I think simplicity at the end of the day will win 100% of the time this war when it comes to who's going to win the e-commerce side of it. And I think TikTok, there might be other software that could come up, but right now it looks like that's going to be the the winner.
It might open up the next wave of content. We talk about decentralization of content, how that's what we've seen, in the last, 15 years. And it's happened in that time frame much faster than it has in the history of entertainment. But I think there's a good chance with live streaming, or when it comes to, better ways of attribution, that it's going to make it so other competitors rise. And there's going to be not just a decentralization of content, but a decentralization of platforms. And so when it comes to, sales and attribution, that's, us as a company, we're an AI entertainment business, we have invested most of our resources into creating those predictive models with deep learning neural networks to be able to look at all the data and be able to not just predict views or clicks, but predict sales. But one thing that we've been really investing in a lot is making sure that we have models in place that makes it so our AI can adapt to new platforms. Because as you mentioned, every platform is going to have a different type of content or a variety of types of content. And you need to be able to make sure when you're going into a new, platform with new types of videos that, you adapt to how the natives look at that content. And it's funny that I say natives, but like the native content is just going to be different everywhere else. Just like when you work across the globe and you work across different countries, you have to be very sensitive to culture. That's the exact same thing when it comes to platforms. You got to be very sensitive to the community and the culture of that platform in order to be successful. And in the future, when we're all going to have to be using AI in order to be successful, working across millions and millions of different creators and to be able to understand what's out there, but also what to prioritize, you're going to have to make sure they have technology that is specific for that platform that you're working on.
Yeah, that's right. Another platform we haven't talked about that we've been very successful on is Pinterest, and part of that is our category, right? We're perfect matchup for them in food, travel, home, and design, right? Those are key categories. Beauty is also a very big category on Pinterest. Our aesthetic really lines up with them. We make beautiful stuff, and I think that's really celebrated on that platform. But the other piece, it's kind of what we talked about a moment ago, is it was a platform that was starting to embrace video. We got there early. We were kind of the earliest, so we now have probably more content on Pinterest than any video content than any other provider. And I know we're the most viewed as well. We've done, I think in the last just 18 months, we had done like 1 billion views just on Pinterest alone.
That's amazing.
And so that's a platform, again, where I think people maybe haven't rushed to, because again, it's like, oh shit, this is another, another platform I have to go, work on, or it's going to take more effort. But that was one we tested early. We were impressed with the engagement. And again, I think they will they're perfect for live streaming commerce. They haven't announced anything on that. But like when you think about who can compete in that space, I think they're a real, a place that can really compete. The other platform would be Snap. Snap just launched Snap Minis. That's a whole new way to think about Snap. And Ricky Ray, I know you're a fan of what's happening in China and working there. Minis are a huge thing, right? I mean, WeChat is the internet in China to a large degree. And minis are a way that people can stand up businesses. And so I think that's really thoughtful for Snap to embrace that. Obviously, they're paying attention to what's happening. And I think that's an exciting way to enable creators or businesses to try to develop more sustainable business models on some of these platforms, which, as we all know, is really needed. Yeah.
I mean, no, I'm excited about the future of Snap, and I'm happy that they've had some really rough competition that they've had to deal with, because it's going to force them to be even better. Pinterest, is a platform that's been around for a while, that's never getting the spotlight. But what I feel like they've done correctly is they've really always kept the lower funnel metrics in mind. And when it comes to I believe at one time they're talking about doing rev shares or incentivizing people, to drive sales on their platform, which I thought was, really innovative at the time. For me personally, ever since Pinterest came out, like my wife and my sisters, I know a lot of people that are just obsessed with Pinterest. For some reason, I don't know if it's just me and my personality and how I process imaging, et cetera, I get so lost on that platform. I immediately get a migraine. I go on there and there's all this stuff happening and I can't stay focused. And so I've gotten good enough where I can navigate so I can go check out my wife's, pins. And so, cause that's how I choose her gifts. If I don't do that, she will never like a surprise that I get her. And so I always see what she has listed and then I go and find it. And so I'm really thankful for Pinterest when it comes to that. And we've done some successful campaigns on Pinterest, but me personally, I have such a hard time using that platform.
Maybe that's why TikTok's so good for you, right? It's just going to choose, in these short
his ADD. Yeah, it's perfect for his ADD for sure. No, I think the point that I look at is, yes, you can have very specific demo type of products that would engage with a certain way, and it's going to go every single time, and they're going to crush it in that certain way. But I'm more interested in what's the general audience. What is my my kids are going to do and their friends and where they're going to go. Because I can guarantee you they still send snaps as a way to communicate back and forth, but they're not on Snapchat. I know that seems really weird. It's like that's the way they communicate, but it's not. They're not devouring content that way. And so those eyeballs of where that general audience is going, I think everyone needs to pay attention. And right now it is TikTok. And I know I've been saying it time and time again, but I think that the elements of what makes TikTok what it is some of the elements that's missing some from these other platforms. It might have started out that way, but the essence that anyone can create, anyone can do, anyone can showcase, it's great. It's like I had a son I still have a son, but he's on TikTok. He's like, I just got 1 million views on doing a backflip. So he did, we were living in North Carolina, for the summer because of COVID and stuff like that, just so we were closer to the client. And they just took a van home, about a month ago, and they just kind of hit every state that they could. And he did a backflip in every state. I mean, he got 40,000 followers just off of that, and it just like when someone can create something that they're passionate about and there's other people, oh, that was cool or that was engaging. That is where the true power is taking the person that's not a niche. It's just an average person, general person, and giving them that type of power. That's something that you need to take note of for sure. And so
one thing to look at with TikTok as well is they've beat the first hurdle. Well, obviously they're breaking all the records with growth, but Facebook was not able to replicate what they're doing. Reels has a lot of usage and there's a lot of excitement there.
No one's excited about Reels, dude. Come on. No one is literally excited about it.
I'm trying to be positive. There might be some upside here. But with that said, let me finish. When Instagram came out with stories, that was a huge negative impact on Snap. Because in some ways they did it better than Snap. Yeah. They made it so you could swipe up. And so the question was, before Instagram was coming out with Instagram Reels, is how big of a difference is this going to, how big of a game changer is this going to be for TikTok? And what we found is that they were not a threat whatsoever for TikTok. If anything, they potentially inspired people to want to go check it out, on the TikTok platform. But
take a look at what they did. They did something that the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. Trust me, it was the dumbest thing ever. You have something that works. Stories is like one of the best engagements on Instagram. You have the highest click-through rate. Why don't you just interface that already and just make it a little bit different so that you're competing? You have just a different way to surf or to find content and discover content. But no, they had to literally disconnect it and put it in a certain area. And you're like, I don't even know what to do anymore on Instagram. I really don't. I don't know. IGTV, stories. I just don't know what to do.
It is a totally different.
Sorry, go ahead, Larry.
Go ahead, Larry.
It is a totally different format. You asked the question. I don't know a single person, that really loves Reels. It only needs one person. His name is Mark. He can turn the dials to make it successful. Look, once you have the platform, the audience, as we know, the people who sit on the other side can make things successful, if it makes sense to them. And part of what they're balancing constantly is, how will this format monetize? I think that's why Stories is Stories is a great format, but that's in part why it's been so successful, is because they're going to turn the dial on Stories because there's a more natural monetization path than in feed. Like no one wants to run pre-roll in feed, right? And so you have to, come up with different things. So that's a key driver for why things will be successful. And then the other is the demo and engagement. If they're worried that they're really losing younger people on Instagram, they got to do that. And by the way, it was a fairly natural thing anyway, because a lot of the TikTokers were posting that content on Instagram anyway.
Absolutely.
And so it's not that big of a stretch, and it's fun. Really, I mean, this stuff is fun. So I think, again, give people what they want.
Yeah. And I think just the essence of it, of what they want, is they want powerful tools to create. Like that's what they don't get. It's not like the delivery mechanism. Like TikTok, what it is a powerful editor. And well, that's what Snapchat was. It's like, here you have these filters and all this other stuff from there, but it's more about giving them the ability to create, like their algorithm that they have, the AI editing system to get exactly with the music. That's what they love. It's like easy way to edit. And that's what these companies aren't taking into consideration. They think it's just a consumption thing, which it's not. It's a creation thing.
Yes.
And when you cater to those creators that they can create content easier, and it's like, oh no, that's like so lit because we were able to do on the beat and I didn't have to edit it and it automatically went there. I mean, that's where they're missing the mark.
That's a huge point.
I don't know. I just
one thing that Larry mentioned, I agree with. A lot of that comes down to what does Mark want, and so even though Reels,
he's been wrong a lot. I can give you a full list of about 200 pages of everything
right there. But yeah, let me finish. The thing is if you're a creator, and you want to grow your audience and gain traction on Instagram, you should be uploading Reels. I mean, you should be doing as many Reels as possible because you're most likely in a positive way going to trigger the algorithm on Instagram. Just like whenever they create a new feature, whether it's on Facebook or Instagram, whoever adopts that first could have some great upside. Now, I agree with you. I don't think Reels is even in the same universe as TikTok, but Instagram needed to do it. This is how they stay relevant. They have to keep evolving like they have, and that's what's made Facebook last as long as they've lasted. They
but it's more like, and this is just
because they were able to do that. But with that said, it's all about testing. Brands should test Reels. Like I mentioned this earlier with Instagram Stories. We jumped on that immediately. And that was one of the best things for our business a couple of years ago because Instagram Stories had really high engagement and really high conversions. And they still do today. When we have an AI optimized campaign, we're averaging between a 5 and 15% click-through rate, 2 years later.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things where obviously I don't think the execution is going to make it so Reels ever replaces TikTok or hurts TikTok. But the whole point of saying that is that TikTok had one of the biggest players in the industry, or the biggest platform in the industry, coming in and competing, and TikTok was still able to stay relevant and strong, and that is amazing.
No, I agree with that, but I'm just saying that there's a difference between copycatting someone, and they did a great job. They copycatted Snapchat. That's great. They did a great job in that,
and they beat Snapchat,
which is great. But the difference is, where's the money? Where is the money? Because at the end of the day, where does it go in their pockets? If you want the high quality creators to actually invest time, energy, and focus in creating content for it, you have to have a monetization play that's not a creator fund. It needs to be, hey, the sky's the limit, grow your audience, engage with them. And that's where I think everything circles back to this.
The money with Stories, though, they were the first ones to do a swipe up. And that right there immediately stimulated and put more resources into the influencer economy because brands could attribute success as a result. When before with Instagram, you had an image, but you could not click out. You had to click on a profile link. But once they had the swipe up as a possibility, that's one thing that just naturally made a huge boost to, I'd say, the creator economy when it comes to Instagram. But I agree. Where's the money? Platforms now need to stop thinking about just consumers and brands. They need to start thinking more about creators and how creators can make more money. And I think, Larry, you probably have a lot of opinions on this.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the amazing things that was, again, the premise of when we started our company was obviously we kind of understood YouTube and understood that really defined video in 2012 we thought all these other platforms would emerge and really become distribution points for us. They have. But what is surprising still to this day is they haven't really figured out monetization for people who put content on their platforms. I mean, many of the platforms we just mentioned have no direct monetization schemes for the people publishing content to their platform. Now, what our company did and what Ricky Company does is we figured out how to live within the ecosystem and take advantage of that audience we have and delight brands by enabling them to connect with those big audiences we have. And that's largely done through sponsored content. At least that's what we call it. Could be called influencer marketing. And so we've been able to actually do something, quite effective, quite big, works for us, works for the brands. But the on-platform monetization, it's shocking that it's 2020. I started my company in 2012, and this still hasn't really been figured out. Some platforms are better than others. Snap with Discover, by the way, Discover has grown very materially, and the users on Snap are watching things on Discover. That is at least a place where they really did think through monetization for the content publishers or the publishers they were bringing on the platform. But it's been surprising how these other platforms haven't quite really figured out. And what it speaks to is we are really, people don't want to hear this probably, but we are in inning one of kind of creative disruption, as you guys might call it, or the remaking of Hollywood or the remaking of content creation in a modern era. That's why we call ourselves a modern media business. But we are still at the very, very beginning of this. And it seems crazy because we've all been working on it for so long, but it really is the beginning. And those platforms, to your point, are going to have to do that. And maybe live streaming shopping is the way it gets done, by the way. What's funny about live streaming shopping, we just go back to it for a second, is, the MCN concept totally exists in China around live streaming. Like it's a totally important part of that ecosystem, which is just so funny to me, right? As because we saw what happened in that ecosystem, but that's like a viable part of that ecosystem because there is sort of a middle layer that is translating how to, make the commerce stuff work on live streaming for some of the creators or partners. And so that was just one of the interesting things, but maybe that is one of the ways that, the ecosystem balances a little bit where, the creators or the people creating the content can, really monetize directly on the platforms and really build big businesses.
No, I agree with you. And I agree that this is the beginning. As exhausting as it's been in the last decade, but pivoting and all the evolution that's had to happen, all the bubbles that have popped, it is still really the beginning, which is very exciting. And right now, I think it's even bigger than most people realize and most brands realize. Like there's literally millions of content creators that have very strong followings. And it's in some ways too hard for, I think, the human mind to process. And that's why we've had to really invest in machine learning and deep learning, because there's really so much going on out there. And I love, where you mentioned, China, how they have their MCN model. What's interesting about that is I believe most of them are starting to follow more of a taste-made model when it comes to like MCN, because there are networks that represent talent. But I feel like most of the networks I met, they own all their content. Like, for example, Ms. Jia, who's one of the biggest creators on Douyin, I don't believe she actually owns her channel. It's something that's owned by the network, and she started out as an employee and then became a face of some content. And so it's really going to be interesting to see the trends in the East coming to the West, but to see how big this gets, because a lot of what we're doing in the West specifically, the content is globalized, but we're now starting to see great some patterns and trends around localization, and it's just going to get bigger and more complex. And to me, it's just very exciting.
Yeah, there's no doubt. As I think I mentioned earlier, we create content in 6 or 7 different languages, everything from, something that might be 10 seconds to, a feature-length documentary. But we do that with, frankly, many creators that we met in the early days of creating Tastemade, who were, maybe successful YouTubers and built relationships with them over time and then helped they've been helping us build our company in different parts around the world, whether it's Brazil or Argentina or Indonesia or Japan or UK. Out of London, we have a studio in London, and so we've really built an ecosystem that enables us to create truly native. I think you mentioned it earlier, Ricky Ray. Native content, and what native means on these platforms is we got to figure out all these different formats. But if you're going to do it in a country like Brazil, I mean, one fun fact you might like is in Brazil, the most liked anything in the country of Brazil is Neymar, the famous soccer player, right? That makes total sense. But like the 10th most liked anything, brand, company, whatever, in Brazil is Tastemade. And that was only made possible because we were able to get on that platform early. We were able to get on that platform with formats that we knew that worked. And then more importantly, we didn't create content from the United States and try to export it to Brazil because we had no clue. That wouldn't be smart. We, started with a really small team in Brazil, and that's now become a bigger team. And they create native formats, original content from that market out of our studio in Sao Paulo for that audience. And that's been kind of the secret to our success. But that also speaks to what's so different about this opportunity versus, say, television, right? Television, it used to be like, if I'm going to distribute my network, I got to go cut a deal with Comcast on the Eastern Seaboard, right? Today, when we put a piece of content live on YouTube or one of these other platforms, it's available to 220 countries and territories. And that's one of the fundamental things that's different, I think, about this moment in time. And it's more complex, but it speaks to also just how big the opportunity is for companies like ours or companies like yours who are solving these problems globally.
Well, Larry, thank you so much for your time today. We have one question we ask all our guests. It's like, where do you see the industry go in the next 2 to 3 years? Like, what are you the most excited about? Like when you're talking with your partners and you're strategizing, where are you the most excited?
Yeah, we spent a lot of today talking about platforms and social. The other big trend that we're very excited about is streaming television. One of the things that we did about 2.5 years ago was we launched a streaming 24/7 linear network on YouTube TV. So we were one of only 3 kind of non-traditional networks that launched on that platform. We've gone on to launch that on pretty much every major platform in the US. So whether it's on SVOD platforms like Hulu or Amazon Prime, or more traditional pay TV cable, platforms like DirecTV or Comcast. And then there's now emerging of a lot of free platforms like Roku and Samsung that really have big and engaged audiences. And so we're across all of those with kind of something totally native to streaming television, which is a 24/7 linear streaming network that features a lot of the great talent that we discovered along the years on social. It's for a younger audience because, again, more people watch more traditional content's watched by older people. And so these worlds are merging. And that's, kind of, again, why we started the company is we thought these two worlds would collide and birth new brands, new networks. And that's what we felt like we were building or have been building over the years. And it's exciting for us now to see these two things collide in this way, because I think that's what the opportunity is.
Well, thank you so much, Larry, for your time. And definitely a big fan for sure. You guys can see either in the show notes or in the description of the video, like some links to Tastemade all over the world. Thank you so much for your time. And Ricky, it's always a pleasure, my friend.
I think on the next video, we got to debate more though.
Oh, okay. Like that's always a given, dude. Like every single time, that's a given.
I'm ready. I feel like we were kind of close there for a second. We were too nice to each other, but I'm always game. It was really fun to chat with you guys, and you're both so smart about what's happening in the industry, and it's such a great forum. So I appreciate the time.
Well, Larry, you're the legend. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll be talking again soon.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.